So if any of our YouTube guests want to ask questions, they can too, and Domla will relay those questions to us. Before they start speaking, I just want you all to keep in mind when you listen to Rick and Ken, the speaker we had 2 weeks ago. And I want to see if you can put any of what he said in some of the context they're going to talk about today. And that was Walter Eisenberg. And Ken and Rick, I don't know if you know Walter, he's the owner and president of Sage Hospitality. And so Walter came in and was our guest speaker 2 weeks ago, and was quite interesting. I'm sure you guys are going to be far more interesting, but he was good. And so, and of course they have restaurants as well as hotels, but kind of an interesting situation too with his property. With that said, I want to turn it over to Ken and Rick. Thank you.
Well, before we get started, Rick will give you an introduction of what we do, but we're going to play a little game, right? And whoever can answer the question correctly and immediately will receive $100 from Rick Tomjanovic.
Did you know this, Rick?
Yeah, Ken's going to fund me. It's okay.
Yeah. He just turns in an expense account, that's all. So it's $100 if anybody can answer it right away. And hopefully Pat or Dr. Mario will give you extra credit. So who can tell me what HTML stands for? All right. Well,
what's that? You cut out a little bit, Ken. What?
HTML.
Oh, okay.
All right. You can't Google it. All right. So nobody wins the $100.
Give him a minute.
Is it hypertext manual language?
Markup language.
Markup language. My bad.
Yeah, you're bad. No winner. Maybe,
oh, man.
But maybe we'll give you $50. Anyways, that's what HTML is. And so the new format is called HTML5. We're going to talk about HTML5 a little bit later on in our program. So, Rick, would you like to go ahead and start off with introductions? And
Sure. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about us and then about our company. Ken and I both started in the hospitality industry in the early 80s. Ken started with a Holiday Inn Group at the time and has worked for several companies that he'll tell you about through telling you some of his stories. And I started also working for the Holiday Inn Group, and that's how we met. And we actually met through some friends that we had in the industry, and Ken's wife happened to work at the same hotel that I did. So that's how we got to know each other. We both took different routes, worked for several different franchise companies and franchise owners. I'm more on the entrepreneurial, independent owner separate side until later in his career. Somewhere around 1996, we got a wild idea that we were going to start a hotel management company. And for those of you that recall, well, you may not recall, you're all too young, but in the 90s, the hotels had taken a really bad downturn in the early 90s. And the times were tough, and it was really an unusual time to start a management company for us. Although by the time we started, things were getting much, much better. So we formed a company called TriStar Management Company. Ken, myself, we had a senior partner named Paul Tucker. So we've been in the business officially as a management company since 1997. We've seen many companies come and go, but we're very fortunate to still be around and doing what we do. As an offshoot to that, we also developed a company called hmbookstore.com, which is a hospitality e-learning platform that Ken will tell you a little bit more about later on. And we're also working on some other technology platforms that we'll be able to share with you. So Ken, with that, I'll let you add a few words and then we can move on.
Well, you know, when you start your career, you sort of say to yourself, how do I grow my career once you graduate from a university? So Rick and I are going to give you some lifetime experiences on how that sort of works. So you have to go where the promotions are. When I graduated from UNLV, I went to St. Louis, then I went to Poughkeepsie, New York, then Kansas City, then Pittsburgh, then Indianapolis, and then Phoenix. Now that's a lot of moves. I was married, had children, but each move was a promotion. and not every promotion do you receive an increase in salary. So I want to talk about that for a minute. In fact, twice in my career, I took a decrease in salary in order to get the promotion that I wanted. So you have to sort of think about, as you move through your career, what are you trying to accomplish? Me personally, I was trying to accomplish getting to the position that I wanted to get to, which was a general manager of at that time, a 300-room hotel. And then from there to own my own hotels. But you just don't click your heels 3 times and end up in Kansas. So you really have to put in the work. So I want to share with you that it's not simple. It's not like you're going to get a job at the Ritz and you're going to move up through the system and then someday become the general manager. There's a lot of things that you have to do in order to get to the position that you want to get to. Or otherwise, you can be like a lot of the Cornell students and go work for PKF and be an analyst and do market studies and all that kind of really boring stuff. So hopefully this is live on YouTube and someone from Cornell will actually watch this, right, Rick?
Sure, sure.
So when you're moving through your career, you have to sort of make the logical steps. So I'll give you my steps in my career. I went from a catering director after graduating from UNLV to an assistant food and beverage director to a food and beverage director. And remember, each time I went to a new town, a new state, with the same company in most cases. From food and beverage director, I became a general manager. And then I became a general manager of a 300-room hotel, which was one of my first goals. And then after that, I called Rick up and I noticed in my company, we owned 120 hotels. It was called Cervico out of West Palm Beach, Florida. And I said to Rick, everybody that's in the corporate circle that turns 50, they seem to get terminated. And I said, and Rick and I were about 34 at the time. I said, you and I are going to be 50 someday, Rick, and we'll probably get terminated. So why don't we start our own company and terminate ourselves when we become 50? And what was your response to that, Rick?
Well, my response was that it was a great idea, but in my career path, I had worked as a bellman, front office desk clerk, and by the age of 19, I was a front office manager for a very large hotel in St. Louis, Missouri. Fortunately, I was able to do the same thing Ken did, but I didn't have to move as much as he did. But I did have to change companies to do that. Ken did it with the same company, but I had to move companies. But I too recognized the fact that being a general manager was my shorter term goal, but my longer term goal was to be in some sort of regional position or potentially owning my own business as well. So our goals had aligned at that time, and we had felt that it was the right window for us to move forwards. And so in 1996, I was working for a particular partner that wanted to develop some hotels in Phoenix, Arizona. And Ken and I have this philosophy that when the market's doing one thing, we tend to do the opposite. And Ken will tell you a little bit more about that as we go through this presentation. But we had a developer that wanted to develop 2 hotels on the south side of the Phoenix airport. And I know he mentioned in jest some working for PKF or some of these feasibility firms, and everybody but anybody that we spoke to told that particular ownership group and ourselves that do not develop hotels in this particular region. And Ken called me on the phone and he says, they're out of their minds. And I said, yeah, I know. But I said, we have to convince the ownership group that these people doing these feasibility studies are not, they're just not in touch with what's really going on in that particular market area. Ken was working in a hotel nearby on the south side of the airport, and he had some really solid statistical data that that's where all the growth was going and that's where everything was going to develop. And these owners were a little bit skittish, but after meeting with them and sharing some information, they built these 2 hotels on the south side of the airport, and they were wildly successful. Now imagine that you're in your mid 30s and you're talking to seasoned hotel professionals that have developed multitude of hotels, and you have to try to convince them that what you're telling them is correct. And you have to make sure that what you're telling them is correct. And both of those hotels are still in existence today and thriving and doing very well. They've since been sold. In a nutshell, the owners were able to build those hotels somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 million combined. And after about 7 years of us operating them and working with the ownership group and being partners, those two exact same hotels were sold for $28 million. So if that doesn't tell you that you can't, you have to have a very detailed and nuanced understanding of the hospitality business. Nothing does.
Yeah, so Rick's correct. When someone says no, that means yes, and when somebody says yes, that means no. So we'll give you some real life experiences. You have to be persistent in anything that you do. If it's with your education, if it's with owning a company, if it's being a manager for a hotel, you have to be persistent. So in our case, we started with a brand. We built a new hotel. One of those two hotels that Rick was referring to was called a Hawthorne Suites. And it just was not getting the reservation system that a new hotel should get. So we went to Hilton, and we went to Francois and Eric Jacob and said, hey, we want to convert this to a Hilton Garden Inn. Well, Hilton says, we don't do any conversions. We're a pure brand. We're only building Hilton Garden Inns. And this was at the beginning of the Hilton Garden Inn franchise system, probably 2 years in, and I think maybe they had maybe 10 hotels. Right, Rick?
That's correct.
So they kept saying no. And we said, well, you just can't say no because we think our product's better than your newly built Hilton's. And this product was only a year old. So I said, who do I ask? And they said, well, you have to ask the president of the company. And they giggled. So Rick and I, sort of young in our career, called up the president of the company. And he said, hey, guys, I'm going to be in Phoenix next week for the Arizona Lodging Conference. I'll come by with one of my senior managers. We'll take a look. What did Francois say? He said no. He said, I'll probably say no, but we'll take a look. They walked through, scratched their head, and said, you know what? This would make a great Hilton Garden Inn. And we were able to convert the Hawthorne Suites to a Hilton Garden Inn and double its revenue with the flip of a switch. And what we learned early in our career is that persistence in taking no doesn't mean no. It means you take it every level you can, you open every door possible until you finally get the yes. So do you have an example, Rick, of another time we were told no and we were able to accomplish?
Yes. There was a local Native American tribe here that was deciding that they wanted to build a brand new resort next to their casino. This was shortly after we had opened our company. It was around 2000. And they put out an RFP to do a hotel with 250 rooms, about 25,000 square feet of meeting space. And they wanted it to be a 4-diamond hotel. And we were bidding with 2 or 3 large management companies on the project. And everybody that was in the industry says, there's not a chance in hell that you guys are going to be selected to manage this hotel. And we said, well, we're not so sure about that. We think we can. Up until that point, in all honesty, we had worked at some large hotels, but we had never developed a resort hotel. One of the suitors was Hilton, and another one was IHG, which was Holiday Inn at the time.
In Starwood.
And Starwood, and a couple of smaller, larger, management companies here in the Phoenix area, which I'm not going to name, but they were pretty large companies. And then it was Ken, myself, and the small group we had put together. So part of the process was to do an RFP. And Ken and I sat down one day and we said, look, we can do an RFP. We can tell them how to build a hotel. We can tell them what it's going to look like. We can tell them what market segments are going to generate. And we can do pro formas. But what we can't do is understand their culture. So we took great pains in learning about the Native American culture, which I don't know if you've ever studied any Native American tribes. They're sovereign nations. They own their own real estate property, and they operate way different than what we do. It's like working in another country, an example. So we took great pains in understanding the community, their customs, and everything. And they were trying to narrow down what brand to be with some of these other management companies. And Ken called me and he says, look, I know that at that time, the Radisson hotel chain would be the perfect fit for this environment. And I have to tell you, when the Hilton folks found that out and the Intercontinental folks found that out, they chuckled. And when some of the other competition said, "You're going to bring Radisson to the table, you're going to be water." Well, what we knew, what they didn't know, is that nations had what's called sovereign immunity. They have their ability to make their own contract law. They have their own court system, and they want management deals and they want franchise deals to be under their law and under their system. We had figured that out, and we had vetted with Radisson, would you guys be open to writing a management agreement with a Native American tribe using sovereign immunity? Well, they said, sure. We're doing that currently with the Oneida tribe in Wisconsin. And we said, perfect. Would you send one of your senior developers to come do a presentation with us? And of course they did. And to a person, when they asked each one of the other bidders, how do you guys feel about sovereign immunity and this particular language that you have to have in a franchise agreement that follows Indian law? To a person, they said, we don't know what you're talking about. But we did, because we took the time to learn about it. And the Radisson franchise gentleman said, well, surely we can. We're currently working a deal with the Oneida tribe. As it turns out, the chairman and the vice chairman of this particular tribe were friends with the chairman and the vice chairman of the Oneida tribe. And they did have a vote, and we were selected to be the management company. And to this day, I think they're all still scratching their heads and wondering how we got that deal. And that's part of just being diligent and persistent. You have to take the time to understand every nuance of what you're doing in every day. And part of that is taking a self-inventory. And by the way, imagine at 34 years old, bidding against these companies and stepping in and trying to make yourself appear bigger and better and badder than they were. It was a bit scary, but we did it with confidence because we knew we had the correct information and did our due diligence. Ken, you have anything to add to that story?
Yeah, and we managed that asset for 10 years and trained internally their folks to then take over the management agreement, the management of the asset, which they currently manage today. And, once upon a time, someone said to me when we started the company, and his name is Dave Buddemeyer, he's the owner of Driftwood Hospitality in West Palm Beach, Florida. He said to me, he said, Ken, when you have a management company, sometimes you're going to get fired if you do a great job. And obviously you'll get fired if you're not doing a good job. So I said to him, what do you have to do? Like an average job to not get fired? He says, sort of. He said, but that's really not your nature. He says, if you don't do a good job, it's because either the hotel is the wrong brand, the wrong location. It won't because of your management. But you're going to get terminated if you do a great job. And I said, well, that's not going to happen. Well, about 4 years into our management agreement, we're managing a Hilton product, a brand new built Hampton Inn and Suites in Phoenix. And the hotel is doing, as Rick described, wildly well. 100-room hotel was throwing off $1 million in profit a year. Amazing. In this little 105-room hotel, we were making a management fee of about $150,000. The owner and I and Rick are good friends. His name is Charles Clark. He walks into my office, says, Ken, and we just went to his wedding, and walks in the office and says, hey, Ken, just wanted to let you know that I froze the bank accounts. And we had learned that this morning. I called him and says, hey, there's something wrong with the bank accounts. They're frozen. He goes, oh, yeah, I'm going to stop by the office. So we knew something was up. He says, hey, I got to let you guys go. He says, I went to your general manager. I told him I was going to pay him an extra $15,000 in salary. He's staying with me. You guys have done a great job. We're making a ton of money. Thank you very much. And if you want to sue us because you have 2 years left on your agreement and you want to litigate it, go ahead. I still love you, but you did the job that you guys did. You just did it too well. And he left. You shook hands and left. And Rick and I didn't know what to say. But it reminded me what Dave Buddemeyer told me 4 years earlier. And since that time, we've been terminated several times for doing a job too well. Do you want to talk about doing a job too well, Rick?
Yes. I think you have to define yourself as to what you want to accomplish in life. And if you're going to be in this business, there's only one way to do the job, and it's to do it too well. Um, when you really look at what business you're thinking about entering here and talking about hospitality, you have to be on your game 24/7 at 100%, 110% every day. Um, and I think that if you give that up at the end of the day, you're not going to be happy in the hospitality industry. As a hotelier, you have a responsibility to your clients and your owners to do the best possible job. The situations that Ken described are really financial decisions that you can't control. And there's some things in your life that you just can't control, and you can't focus on those things. And to the end of that story, we never sued Charles Clark. We remain friends. He's still wildly successful. And we still point to that hotel as one of our successful operations. But I think it's very important that where you're sitting today, when I was in high school in my junior year, my father came to me and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be in a hotel business." He says, "You don't want to be an eye doctor or something else?" I said, "No, I want to be in a hotel business." Why? I really couldn't tell you tangibly when I was 17 or 18 years old, when I wanted to be in a hotel business for, but I just felt this innate desire to be in something that was fast paced, moving, and really where I could do what I like to do best, and that's work with people. Um, so I pursued that career. And as I mentioned earlier, by the age of 19, I was running a large hotel staff as a manager. And I never, and always employees would come up to you and say, "Man, you're working extra hard, man. Slow down. You're making us look bad." And it's like, look, guys, it's not about me making you look bad. It's about doing the job to 100% capacity. So I think all of you need to just sit back and think about, well, what do I want to achieve in this industry? And how do I want to get there? And and I think it's important to understand what track you want to take, because there's a lot of ladders in the hospitality industry that you can go and do very well. If some of you are culinary, um, have a culinary bent and really enjoy the kitchen side of things, I can show you several executive chefs in this market and larger resorts that are making tremendous salaries being in a kitchen of a hotel and running as a chef. Some of them go on and do other things on their own. Some of them just remain there for their careers and do very well. Or if you want to be in the sales side of the business, there's nothing wrong if that's your acumen and that's where you want to go. Or much like Ken and I, we were operators who understood the importance of sales and forced ourselves to learn that side of the business. And fortunately, we did, because during our career, the market started to shift. And the reason I'm telling you this kind of long story about self inventory, when Ken and I broke into the business, you could not, absolutely not, get promoted to be a general manager at that time with several hotel chains. We had the fortune of working with Holiday Inn, unless you were a food and beverage director first. I got to tell you guys, Ken loves culinary. I love culinary, but I never wanted to be a food and beverage director in my career, ever. It was not something that suited me, that I felt comfortable in, but I had to do it. And I did it. And I was wildly successful at it because I just worked extra hard and I was promoted. During that time, things changed. What happened was, when Ken and I broke into business, there wasn't a thing called limited service hotels. It was either a full service hotel or a mom and pop roadside inn, motel, if you will. Well, as the brand started to look at ways to expand their portfolios, they decided if they built a Hampton Inn or a Holiday Inn Express without food and beverage, they could get rid of a department that is very difficult to run, and in most cases breaks even or loses a little bit of money. It's a loss leader. So they started developing these small, independent, or I'm sorry, small limited service hotels, or focus service as they call them. And that kind of changed the landscape of what it took to become a general manager. Because now you didn't need food and beverage to become a general manager. You could go from being a sales director or a front office manager and step into being a general manager of a limited service hotel. Um, and and as we went through economic downturns and upturns, and as the market grew, we recognized that sales was where it was at. So Ken and I recognized that we needed to become sales managers. As general managers, we have to be sales managers. And if you go out and make 20 sales calls a week and you go out and, beat on doors and try to get business and you don't like it, it's not a lot of fun. But you can't run a hotel without top line revenue. So Ken, when you were doing catering sales, how many calls did you make a week?
Well, I think I was doing somewhere between 5 and 10 per day. So between 20 to 40 external sales calls as a catering director. But, much like Rick talked about sales, you just sort of have to think about, what am I going to be and what am I going to do? So the first third of our presentation today was sort of to explain to you to take self-inventory and put yourself on the road to get you to the point that you want to be at. I think now we're going to switch a little bit and talk about technology in the hospitality industry. What do you think, Rick? Is that this is a good
Sure.
segment? All right.
Sure.
So one of the things that Rick and I noticed when we were taking over hotels was the inability to train employees quickly and get them up to speed and create a service culture. Because there's a market within the hotel business that no one talks about. They talk about group business, transient business, local negotiated business, but they never talk about repeat business. There's no line on a budget that says repeat business. And I always found that to be sort of odd. And so, as Rick mentioned earlier, always try to do something a little bit backwards, and you'll find yourself being really ahead of your competition. So we focus on guest service and trying to make the repeat business never to want to leave our hotel whenever they were coming to our city, to always stay at our hotel and not try the competition. Why? Because we wanted to be their home away from home. So we created something called HM Bookstore. And HM Bookstore is a electronic delivery of training for employees. It was designed for the hotel employees. And then it we created a segment for university students. So HM Bookstore has 150 ebooks. Each ebook has chapters on about every position that you could train somebody with. And the other reason that we wanted to create some sort of training platform was that we had a high turnover in the hotel business. So you have roughly a 40 to 50% turnover margin in a hotel. So when a new person came on, it was really difficult without having electronic training to get them up to speed quickly. In our case, we would hire somebody on Wednesday, tell them they'd start on Monday. Prior to starting on Monday, we would provide them with 3 or 4 ebooks that they had to take. And we could watch them electronically take those. When they would show up to work, they were already 75% trained about our systems and about our philosophy. So the one-on-one training that would occur at the hotel was faster, more efficient, and the employee was brought up to speed quicker and became an outstanding employee and provided the service that a customer would want. And we got rid of the training button. Everybody, when you hired somebody, they'd have this big giant button that was about the size of a softball that said trainee. We got rid of that because we didn't think that worked very well. So we just trained them electronically, and then we did our one-on-one training at the hotel. Rick, do you want to talk a little bit about HM Bookstore?
Yeah. So once again, we were always looking for a way to get it done. So when we first started, we were using what was akin to the floppy disk, and we were writing training in Word, and we were developing it on a computer that was about the size of my house, if I recall, but jokingly, but it was a big box. And we were having the employees taking these classes. And then we figured out there's this new technology called CD-ROMs, and we thought it was going to be the world changer forever, right? So Ken hired a person to convert all of our training to CD-ROM training. So we would send out a CD-ROM and you could take your HM Bookstore classes. And that was in roughly about 2000. Of course, then the world changes again, as it always does. And the internet became prevalent. And we were trying to figure out a way how we were going to deliver our training via the internet. And we actually homegrown, took a learning management system and hired someone to do the coding and built our own system. And we were providing online internet training long before online school was being considered, long before Zoom was even a thought in somebody's head, and long before any kind of online training was taking place. And we made a huge investment in that industry, knowing that there was going to at some point be a need. And none of us could predict what the world was going to bring us. And as we all know, in the last year, the world has changed dramatically. The way we even interact with ourselves, the way we go to school, the way we go to work. It changed because of COVID. So again, we took that technology and continued to evolve it. Originally, it was a very archaic technology that we have grown through. And there's a reason that Ken talked to you about HTML5 when we opened this discussion. We used to use a system with Adobe called Flash. It didn't work well with Apple product. It didn't work well with the Mac and the whole area, because they don't have a deal with Adobe. So we had to again reinvent ourselves and say, okay, now we have this whole new technology we have to deal with, and we have to take our training and rebuild it again. So again, imagine in the last 20 years, we've converted our training platform 4 times. And now we're converting it to HTML5. Ken, you want to talk a little bit about what we're going through with that process?
Sure. And I just want to give you some markers as well, because you think that the phone that you use has been around forever. The iPhone was released in 2007 by Steve Jobs and Apple. That's not that long ago. We released our first HM Bookstore online delivery in 2007. At the same time, Steve Jobs. So much like Jobs, we were working in our garage, in a sense, in our office, creating something. And we would show it to universities when we first started, like University of Phoenix. And they said, wow, that's pretty amazing. So how we got in the university business, Dr. Mario was at UNLV. Rick and I flew in 2012, and we showed him HM Bookstore. And he had a fellow with him. I can't recall his name. What was his name, Rick?
Al Isola.
Yeah, Al Isola. And we didn't really know what to call this. We said it's training on the internet. Al says, well, call them ebooks. We said, okay. So we coined the name ebooks. We were one of the first people to use the name ebooks.
And he told you that in the Italian deli across the street too.
We did. And then he says, I take care of all the internships. And he says, Ken, we want to use the intern for our internship books. I said, okay. He says, how much you want to charge? Well, this is not a market that we've ever been in before. I said, I don't know. How much should we charge? He says, well, they have $60 and they need 3 books. So you're going to charge $20 a book. To this day, we charge $19.99 per book for a university student. So we didn't do a market survey and survey students or anyone else. We were eating a roast beef sandwich at an Italian deli, and Al was telling us how much to charge for a book. That was 2012. So now we've moved over to HTML, right? So it's hypertext markup language. It's what everybody uses. What makes HTML5, it's in its 5th version, so unique is that we can plug anything into it. Where the old system, as Rick said, it was sort of clunky. It was hard to plug things into. What do you mean by plug things? We can use other software that other people have developed, and we can use that to create videos or to create maybe other type of online delivery system. We're right now creating videos for classes, which Dr. Mario will see in about a couple of weeks. We just did one on marketing studies and marketing surveys. And then we're going to do one for a law class. And our 3rd one's going to be a hotel operations class, to where you'll be able to see the videos, do it all online, and you'll have ebooks that will coexist with the video presentation that you would be taking in a class. And the ebooks have quizzes in them. So that's how we would create your grade and start creating online material for universities that we're going to want to sort of sell, perhaps not as a professor, but I mean, why work at one university when I can work at 1,000, right, Dr. Mario?
Correct.
So we've taken the same idea, but we're just trying to expand it. So we do that through HTML. It's been painful because we have 150 books. There's an expression that we've lived by, and it is content is king. And it really is the case. In other words, a lot of people can have a platform with 2 or 3 ebooks, but not 150 ebooks in multiple languages. And we do. So we had to convert all these ebooks and put them on a new authoring tool that we had to create as well. So we paid IT folks to create an authoring tool while the old system is still out there working, chugging away. Then after that, we had to build the platform on HTML because we didn't want to rent somebody's HTML platform because we didn't want them one day to say, you know, we've gone out of business. Sorry, Charlie. So we spent a lot of money. We spent over $500,000 on the platform to date. Now we had to have this prepared and ready all by January 10th. Explain to them, Rick, why on January 10th it was important to have the system HTML up and running in the areas that we had.
Well, the reason was very simple. Somewhere around the early part of 2020, maybe late 2019, Adobe came out and said, we used a version called Flash, which was a way to render our training. And Adobe says, guess what? As of December 31st, 2020, we are retiring Flash. Our entire platform was built on that technology. And again, a market shift forced us to shift. And we have 12 months to do it. The reason it went till January 10th is they gave everybody a grace period to complete changing over to Flash. And the way to go was HTML5. So we did right-size pieces and deliver an HTML product by January 10th. It took a lot of hours, a lot of manpower, a lot of brain power to get that done. And that's the reason we had to do it. And I wanted to just take pause here just for a minute as you think about the things we just quickly told you about. One thing that you should hear as an underlying tone is relationships. And mention that we didn't have relationships with previous brand owners, but we called them on the phone. No matter how important or what status we thought they had, we felt we had something we had to tell them when we converted a hotel. And part of the story that Ken omitted is when we were at a conference, Ken says, hey, we're in UNLV. Dr. Mario is still teaching it. We're in Las Vegas at a conference. The truth of the story is Ken and I were tremendously hungover because we were at the opening night conference party. And we had a few too many. And so we asked Dr. Mario to meet us for breakfast. And we had this product that we talked about at the Italian deli. And Dr. Mario said, you know, I've been tasked by Best Western to help them work on a training platform or help them deliver training because they as a brand are having a hard time delivering training. I think simultaneously, Ken and I kicked each other under the, if we don't go to lunch with Dr. Mario, just for the sake of going to breakfast and I'm at Ally Zolo, we don't go to the Italian deli and we don't deliver to universities, and not be afraid to approach anyone. From the president of, we just simply said, hello, my name is Rick and this is Ken, or vice versa, throughout our careers in this industry. So you don't lose sight of the fact that as you're evolving in your career, and you know, we're a bit longer in the tooth these days, but we still live by that premise. We yearly attend the major conference that we continue to learn and train, as evidenced by Ken's desire to get a master's degree just recently. So you can never, in this business, you can never quit learning. And I just wanted to pause there and let you guys kind of ponder that. And then we can talk a little bit more about another foray we took into technology.
And I have some questions. So
Sure.
We were the 8th hotel in the history of the world. Now, you know, the wells with robots that deliver product to and from, guess the name, the robot's name is Archie. It too has been really successful. Our first one that we developed was in 2015. Again, remember, the iPhone's only been around since 2007. We have the 8th robot in the history of the world. But what I really want to talk about is Rover, and then we'll go into questions. Can we do that, Rick?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Rover is really unique. While in the master's program, I met a young man, his name was Sam, and he was one of my classmates, and he was the smartest person in every room that he went. And I have a saying with Sam, if you're the smartest person in the room, go to another room. And he's just wildly smart. So anyways, when he finished, he's from Turkey. We hired him in Phoenix, and he packed up his convertible car, drove to Phoenix, and he works with us. Well, what most people don't know, that Sam is a great coder. He's been coding since he was 11 years old, and he's 23 now. And so I've always had this idea for 10 years, and I even had the name called Rover. And the idea was past, present, and future. How do we send out messages to customers that had stayed with us in the past to have them come back? In the old days, we used to call that a bounce back coupon. That's the past. The future, how do I get a customer to register without ever going to the front desk? Because we have a hotel that actually we operate that doesn't have a front desk. So that was, and it was an experiment for us. And it's literally 2 blocks from our office. So how do we do that? And the last piece, how do we communicate with the customer without an app? Because no one likes apps. So Sam is coding a product, and he said, why don't we use the property management system at the hotel? It's got millions and millions of pieces of information. We just have to create the code and filters to mine that information. So it's called text mining. So Rover's a text mining company, and currently now we can send out a text to any person that stayed at our hotel, because we have your phone number in our property management system that stayed with us before. So imagine if you had a Hilton hotel and breakfast was $19.95. And my slow season in Phoenix is June, July, and August. And you stayed with us last year. I could send you a text saying, hey, if you stay at my Hilton in June, July, or August, we'll give you free breakfast. That might be the difference of you staying with us or our Marriott product. The neat part is the present, and that is where we send you a text. You literally sign your registration card on your phone, push send. It actually sends it to the property management system. We send you a key to your phone. You check in and you go to room 230 and never stop by the front desk. And while you're there, you can order room service. You can get information about specials that we're running for that day in the restaurant. If you need more towels, which I always need more hangers because I always bring too much stuff, I can text to Rover, which goes to the front desk in housekeeping. Can you please bring up, 5 hangers to my room? So now you have a communication device without having an app, which is really a nice thing because your phone is your phone, it's your property. The last piece that it does is the future. Once you check out, it communicates with you when you check out and says, thank you for staying with us. Maybe if we just had a renovation, it sends out a renovation message that we've added a 3rd pool to our resort, or our new golf course just opened, and so on and so forth. So that is called Rover. So now you see Rick and Ken, 2 guys in Phoenix that own a hotel company. We own an e-learning company, and we have a text mining company called Rover. So I know we're going to run out of time pretty soon, Dr. Pat. So should we open up some questions?
Yeah, and let me just make a couple of quick comments before we do that. First of all, I neglected to tell the students, by the way, Mason, I'm glad you made it. Thank you. And Amanda Dugos, I got you registered. Just so you know, there's 2 of our students here, Ken and Rick, that are using HM Books online because they're both interns, right? So Analia, where's Analia? There she is, right? So have you finished all 3 books, Analia? Not yet? You're muted.
Sorry about that. No, I haven't yet.
Okay, did you do the first one though?
No, I just got the access and everything all worked out yesterday. So, because I had with my card, I guess, so they had to send me a new
Oh,
debit
I
card.
think I saw an email about that this morning.
Yeah, I emailed you, but I can get them done in the next couple
Okay,
days.
no, you'll get them done. And,
Thank you.
Yeah, and Mason, I know you got a little bit behind, but you're going to enjoy those too. And by the way, I'll just publicly thank Ken and Rick for giving us the first of the 3 books complimentary for our students, which we
Welcome.
appreciate. Yeah, and good. And the other comment I want to make is on persistence. And since we're talking about HM books, after this all started at UNLV, Ken and Rick began to talk with me in particular, especially this. We didn't get the Best Western contract, by the way, but that's okay. We tried. And they wanted to have us involved in a certificate that could be awarded for people who finished this their HM Books program, if or a part of it, if they wanted to. And UNLV, it's a big university. They were crazy, whatever. They just wouldn't agree to it. Well, as Ken said, people change jobs. In my case, I changed states, and I moved here to Florida, and took over as dean, which gave me a little bit of a bigger platform. And so we were able to conclude that agreement. We haven't executed it yet. I think now we probably will get closer to that, of marketing certificate products. But that persistence is an example of how I think Ken operates and Rick operates, and it can work. I also want to give them a big virtual hug here for the other part of networking they did, which they didn't talk about, but they became immersed in CRE, which is our Hospitality Educators Organization International. They did it because they wanted their product to be seen and to be purchased, but also because they were committed to it, and they're particularly involved with the Western CRE. But so those 2 things I think are illustrative of some of what they talked about. And the last comment I'd like to make on what you said, and I used to work for PKF, and when it was still HKF, and I was my territory was the San Francisco Peninsula, doing market and feasibility studies. And you are absolutely correct. Some of them that are done today, they're purely virtual. They don't, a lot of times they don't even go to the site. Back then, when we did it, there were no computers. So we went, and I would spend a week, 5 days at that location, interviewing businesses around the area, competition, as well as possible demand sources. And I think that's part of the difference in why we see some of these things today that are not as well researched as they ought to be by people on the ground. So the moral of that story is, just because somebody's got some letters after their name, don't necessarily take their word for it that they've done what they need to do to find out about the product. Just saying. All right, we're going to open this for questions to Group A first.
I had a question.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
I
Who
put
was
the hand
first?
button because I wasn't sure if that
You
was
go.
the thing to do. My question relates to the H&M bookstore. How do you guys handle the influx of traffic from the remote endpoints? And do you guys suffer any packet loss, or do you have difficulty with packet capture? And do you have a dedupe?
Well, that's sort of like a 3-part question.
It is a 3-part question. I do apologize. Sorry. I work in cybersecurity, so I'm intrigued.
Right. So the last part of the question, I'm not sure. You said a dedupe?
Like a deduplication. If you have any packet loss, right? You have something that's going to copy it so that you can duplicate it, so you don't have any loss, right?
Right. So HTML5 is a amazing product in the sense that 1 million people or 1 person could be using 10 books or 1 book, and it works at the same speed that it would, and so there's no loss in that particular way. Second to that, I'm not really sure about the cybersecurity part of it, because our IT guy sort of has that package, and maybe Rick can talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, we use a lot of encryption. We use authorized.net. We don't handle the transaction. We just get past tokens.
Yeah.
And,
You
but to
SSL
your,
decryption or TSL?
yes, correct. And then as far as your packets, I mean, we just went through an analysis of an XTML packet yesterday. And made some modifications to it. And I just got an email this morning that my coder worked overnight and made some changes to enhance the product and solve a small issue that popped up because, as you know, the world changes, and one change in one area changes our life. So yes, we do address those issues on a day-to-day basis.
And to let you know, it's not like just pushing a button. When it comes to platform development, we have millions and millions strings of code, and if one little string is broken, something doesn't work, and we don't find out it doesn't work until someone sends us an email, like a student, that says, hey, your thing isn't doing what it's supposed to do in this particular area.
Right.
Especially in the business, we call that bugs. Especially when you come out with a new platform, with the previous platform, as I mentioned, we developed that in 2007. So by the time we got to Pat Mario, it had already had 5 years worth of debugging.
Okay.
This we just released on January 10th, and it has about 2 months of debugging. Although we do think that we created something that doesn't have a lot of bugs, but we really don't find out. So we have a meeting every Tuesday,
Right.
to where we actually look at packages and different things. And yesterday was Tuesday. As Rick said, we found some issues immediately. And by the way, there were 2 or 3 of the issues that we found were generated by students at USF. So thank you to the students that sent us the information.
And to the credit of Ken and Rick, I mean, they have a person who's her I don't know if it's her sole job, but a big part of the job is to deal with people like me and Molly, and she's fabulous. And so we found those bugs, and students, of course, told me, and I told her, and they fixed it. And we work so that we're not here to penalize people. We're here to help people. So I just exonerate the grade and just raise it, because when people take these books, what I love about it as an instructor, they grade them. Ken and Rick, their program does all the grading. All I do is copy them over. And if there was a problem, I raise the grade. What do I care? That's the right way to do it, because
and again, something to consider here is that we could have waited to go to market until we were perfect. But sometimes when you're launching a software product, you can't always be perfect.
No.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's a reason that you're on the 13th version of your Apple iPhone, or there's a reason that Microsoft scrapped Windows 8 because it was a horrible product.
Version of Mac software every day, it seems.
There you go.
You know what I mean? So I was just wondering who your network security broker, who your IT solutions provider was. That's pretty much.
Okay, who's next? Is that Jade or was it Lauren? I can't remember.
No, I'll go.
Okay.
When you guys were starting out, did you think that you'd go technology based, or were you was that not in your goals?
Well, we have found out that you're generally passionate about things that you like. As Rick said, he had to be a food and beverage director, and he was good at it, but he wasn't great at it in his mind because he wasn't passionate about it, because he really didn't like it as much as he liked other areas of the hotel industry. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, absolutely.
So when it came to technology, we just sort of thought 2 things. First thing, what makes us different from all other management companies? HM Bookstore and Rover. And number 2, we just love technology. We love robots. It's just Rick and I just happen to love it, and so we're passionate about it. Technology probably isn't for everybody, and these 2 items, HM Bookstore, e-learning, and Rover, which is text mining, although they're not new, there's big companies doing it, and we're doing the same thing they're doing, and we take pleasure out of that. As Rick said early on, we always enjoyed being bigger than we were. And so we always play like we're bigger than we are. And so technology can make a small company bigger than they are as well.
And I think in the context of your question, you have to understand that technology in the hospitality industry was almost non-existent even as late as the late 90s. It just came to fruition recently. I mean, when we started the industry, we had the akin of a teletype, essentially, to pass messages back and forth between hotels. Everything was handled by voice on a phone line, and we got a reservation. And beyond that, there wasn't a lot of technology outside of what is currently a cash register, which is antiquated technology. So we had to grow with it. So a lot of times, and the point is to see it coming. You want to see the things coming, and that's where Ken has a great eye. He can kind of sense what's the next wave, and we try to get ahead of that curve.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
And was Lauren next?
Yeah, I can go next. My question is, what was your biggest challenge you faced this year with COVID?
Oh, wow. A lot of them. The biggest challenge was to have an occupancy of a hotel go from 80%, or in some cases, 70% to 10%. And what happens in COVID is you still have to pay your mortgage. You still have to pay the power bill. You still have to pay your vendors. Your expense, a lot of your expenses don't go away. So the adjustment was epic. I mean, essentially on March 11th, the world stopped as far as where we're concerned. And we had to figure out how to restructure how we operated our properties almost overnight. And if you look at the industry, what happened was, and I think it blends into our conversation, be as multifaceted as you can, because today's general manager currently under COVID wears a lot of hats. They wear a sales hat, they wear an operations hat, they wear a food and beverage hat. So that was the biggest challenge, is trying to figure out how somebody just turned off the revenue stream and how to survive, basically. And it was through just really soul searching and saying, what's the minimum levels we can operate these hotels until the occupancy is coming back? Fortunately, they're creeping back up and we're on an upside, but there was about 9 months there that nobody knew what was going to happen. Ken?
Yeah, so I'll use a sports analogy. Let's say you're a great boxer, Sugar Ray Leonard, and you can box really well. And you're just, you won the Olympics, you've been a champion at several weight categories, and all of a sudden you have to fight marvelous Marvin Hagler, who's a brawler. And your boxing technique doesn't work with a brawler. You have to then become a brawler. That's what we became. We every day are in a fight with our lenders, with our insurance company, with the customer to some extent because they're not there, with the airline business virtually at zero, with our employees working in the front line, making our bills. We became a brawler. And when it comes back in the fall, which is when we expect things to really be back to normal, we'll turn back and be a boxer. It hasn't been easy.
Thank you. Who's next? Ruben. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just wondering how well were you received by the Native American community when you went in there? I mean, I know that they have different cultures and values than the rest of us do in the country, and I was just wondering how you guys were received working with them.
We were very well received. You have to understand that our goal when we went in there was to get them to self-sufficiency. They basically wanted to pick our brain and learn how to do the job so that eventually we could turn it over to them to run it. It was an industry they'd never been in, but in order to be accepted, we learned a lot about their customs and culture so that we didn't go in and misstep. But yeah, we were widely accepted, but at the end of the day, the goal was for always them to run their operation. So there was always that shadow. And of course, we did it in 10 years. Maybe they wanted it in 5, but it took 10. So there was a little bit of pressure for them wanting to accelerate that. And it's mainly because of their members more than it is the tribal leadership. It's just a function of the way they want to achieve their goals. And we just had to adapt. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Rick, that's a thank you, Rick. And thanks for asking the question, Brian. It's a great question because it's not only Native American tribes as an example. As Rick mentioned earlier in the presentation today that really they're separate, they're sovereign nations. And so when some of you are either working with guests from other countries, you need to understand their culture, which is why we teach some of the stuff we do in our curriculum. But also, some of you will end up working for a while in other countries. And, just because we think America's got it all, well, we don't. and other people, we need to understand their perspective and where they're coming from, how to work with them. So great question, Brian. Thank you, Rick, for a really good answer. Okay, anybody else from Group A? Who was it?
Me, Andrea.
Okay, go.
Like you said earlier, your hotels kind of went down because of COVID, but how has your ebook company, has it grown? Has it declined because of COVID?
It's grown. The one thing that COVID did, it forced everybody to work and go to school from home. And so Zoom became very popular. And of course, their stock is through the roof. But we were using Zoom 2 years ago with HM Bookstore and meeting with customers because we found that it was inexpensive way to meet somebody versus getting on a plane. And so we were using Zoom technology to interview new general managers. I mean, prior to 2 years ago, you'd have to fly a general manager into Phoenix, put them up for 2 or 3 days to interview them or meet them at a hotel outside of Phoenix. So HM Bookstore grew and so did other technologies. And the reason now everybody seems to understand that we can function maybe even better using some of this technology. So I think we're received more.
Thank you. And Amanda Lugos and William Walden, we are running out of time. So in your response boxes on Canvas, just put down your question, but that we ran out of time. Okay. And
okay.
You'll get full credit. And also to our YouTube audience, I don't see anything in the chat. I just checked. And is there anything in the chat?
Yes, we have 2 questions.
Okay, I don't think we're gonna have time for them, unfortunately. So,
Dr. Maria?
what, I'm sorry. So I don't see them in the chat though. Are they there in the chat? Oh,
No,
you get a different chat.
Okay, I can just copy and paste to the chat.
Yeah, and let me just see them because maybe there's something that we can continue if these people want. Okay, how is Archie doing? All right, I think they already answered that. And okay, and then okay, here's one, and I'm going to invite any of you who have to leave now because I do want them to Rick and Ken to answer this next question. It's a really good one. If you have to leave because it is 10:46 now. And by the way, for Ken and Rick, it's 3 hours earlier. They started this class with you at 6:20 this morning. So just for them, which is, commitment. And we really appreciate that. But I would say that next week's speaker is actually going to be Elliot Falcione. He is also on our board of advisors, as is Ken. And Elliot is kind of our informal head of our board in a way. And he's head of the Bradenton Convention Visitors Bureau and of the Convention Center. So he'll have a good presentation, and they're in the process of starting the new Sheraton Hotel that's going to be built there in Palmetto, and we're going to have a lab in that hotel. So that's pretty cool. All right, so if you need to leave. Ken and Rick, can you stay just for a couple more minutes?
Sure.
Yeah, but here's a question. I think you answered the question on Archie, and but here's another one that's really good. Oh, and Analia, I see yours too. Okay, all right. Let's do the other one first, and then we'll get to you, Analia. So the question, guys, is: do you believe the future of education is 100% online? And then they said, like the MOOC model. I don't know if you're familiar with the MOOC model, where anybody can tune in, and if you want credit for it later, you pay for it or something.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't believe we're going to end up there. Human beings are relationship driven. I think it'll be blended. Personally, I don't think it'll be 100% online. Just imagine trying to teach a culinary curriculum 100% online.
Right.
It's difficult.
I can't imagine.
I can't imagine it. So I think there'll be some blending. I think it might be 50-50 for a while. And it'll depend on individual curriculums. But when you think of nursing and all those different things, you got to be with people. And I think, as you can see, when we're allowed to attend events and everything, there's a lot of pent up demand. And I think people are okay with it. And if you look at any CDC studies about lower education, high school, grade school, the kids are struggling. They need that interaction. But I think there is room to blend it. And I think it makes sense in a lot of ways.
Ken, and Ken, just so you all know, in full transparency, Ken just completed his master's degree hybrid. So he was partially online and sometimes here. But not online. He was always here online, live, like we are now.
So I was an expert at sharing the screen on Zoom long before anybody else shared a screen on Zoom. And literally, I was in the classroom every day because USF has room 211, which is a Zoom room. So they would teach in that room, and I was in the class as if I were sitting right there Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for 3 hours for 18 months with Damla, who I think is helping us out.
Damla is here, yeah. And Ken, you were fully engaged, I have to say. But you're right, Rick. The only issue we had when Ken did this is because I'm an old guy. I wanted a lab in the graduate restaurant management class, and Ken wasn't going to fly out for one lab one day, nor did we expect him to. But he found other ways to engage and did other things, and it was okay. So we're going to have to be more attentive to that in hybrid. And just so you all know, so Ken, go ahead and continue. So what do you think?
No, I think there will be 100% online courses, and there'll be some students with higher education that are going to want to use that technology to get their education. In fact, UNLV has a master's program, and it's all online.
Right.
And a friend of mine just finished it. I asked him what he thought of it. He says, I have my master's, but I really would have preferred to have been in class.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think Rick is correct. It'll be blended.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I taught in that program at UNLV, and I hated it because I never got to meet them. If I were teaching and we're not going to do it completely online, Ken, but we are moving toward increasing percentage of it online with options to come in live. But, even if I were to do one 100% online, which I hope I don't have to, I will give a lot of voluntary opportunity to do at least what we're doing over here right now to get people together. And just so you know, Ken and Rick, and I think, Ken, you probably know it already, we will, in the fall, we are going to be offering our bachelor's degree. Every course, with the exception of the food lab courses, every course will be offered at least hybrid. So some of them will be offered all online. Some of them will be hybrid, and we'll offer them simultaneously in Tampa and Sarasota. So people don't have to commute, and the professor will commute. And then when they're in Sarasota, they'll broadcast to Tampa. When they're in Tampa, they'll broadcast to Sarasota. And we think that'll, probably work pretty well. We're going to find out. People said to me, "Well, do you have a template for this? And do you have experience?" No, you're looking at the guinea pigs right now. We're one of the few programs in the country that is going to have 3 campus locations simultaneously, and we're going to make it work.
And to sort of add to that, if you remember early on in our presentation, we had talked about that we are currently creating online video with combination ebooks, with the idea of selling it to university and actually letting the teacher use our product in their classroom, because I think a lot of the teachers are really unsure on how to make this sort of work.
Yeah, or don't have the experience they should have either.
Yeah. And so neither do we, but much like Rick said, you got to see it coming.
Yeah.
And you got to start working on it before it gets here.
Absolutely. Analia, you've been patiently waiting with a big smile. Go ahead.
Hi. So just a quick background on my question. So I work in hospitality in healthcare, a little bit different, but I think of our hospital as a big hotel. So I'm in the process right now of trying to change some of our outdated like procedures and technology that aren't really working in respects to our patient satisfaction ratings. Although I do work for a really good hospital, number 7, I think, in Florida, but I think that there's some ways that we could be better. So my question is, how would you illustrate to upper management that new technologies or new processes are needed? Because that's where I'm kind of finding I'm not sure how to go about it.
Sure. Well, I think you have two different tenants. When I'm staying in a hotel, I'm there because I want to be. When I'm in a
Right.
hospital, I'm there because I don't want to be.
Right.
And I think you have to harness that information and say that, already in context, people are going to have a negative view just because they don't want to be there. So I
Yeah.
think it's important for you to maybe do some research on what categories are currently not scoring well as far as your customer satisfaction, and figure out a way to improve those and bring forth a plan that says, if we did X, Y should be the outcome. And I think that would be the way I would approach it. You're correct 100%. I've just been asked to help a fellow that's doing an assisted living in Missouri, and he just wanted some advice as to how to ingrain hospitality culture in an assisting living complex. And they're very, very transferable skills. So yeah, I would just you got to analyze the data and look at what you think is going to move the needle. And we do it in hospitality all the time. We look at, and sometimes you got to drill down and find out where the breakdown is. And that's the hard part. And
Yeah.
there's always a break in the chain, no matter what it is, it's a break in the chain, whether it's a shortage of manpower, information's not being transmitted correctly or whatever. Just analyze that data as best you can and bring forth a plan. And by the way, if past the call, you need some additional help, Pat has our contact information for you to reach out.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Applies to anybody on the call, by the way.
And the last thing that upper management always wants to know is, how much does it cost?
Right.
And what's my return on my investment? So
Yeah.
not only do you have to do the research to figure out what you have to do, but then once you've figured out what you want to do, and if you're using technology, you have to sort of do a pro forma on not only how it makes the scores better, but if you can increase profitability and scores better, that's the way that you can sell it to upper management.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because that's one of the things that we went through also with COVID is we stopped all elective surgeries. So for us, that was a huge, and people do, a lot of people come there because they have to, but a lot of people come there because they choose to. They choose to have their children there. They choose to have hip replacements or whatever other surgery, they could go somewhere else. So when COVID happened for us, we hit this huge stop, and we had to, a lot of employees got laid off because we have so many. Some people found new jobs. We created a whole new process for our screening and everything, just to keep everybody safe. But it's been crazy. So I'm definitely trying to see it coming back from COVID of how we can, make it still a hospitality in the hospital. So thank you.
Analia, I think Ken and Rick have really kind of hit the nail on the head, is to do research, to do some analysis, to identify those pivot points in the system or the opportunities in the system. The other thing I would do is I would make sure that I spend some time with Justin, and Ken knows Justin. He was in our classes, and Justin at Sarasota Memorial. He was more caring about the extent, or what do you call it, the health rehab area, the new wing that got built. But the two of you have some ideas together, and then go to Lori Liang, who's the head dog, and she's really sharp. And just remind her that I was on the board of the Visit Sarasota County Board with her, and so you have my support in talking to her. She may not want to do anything, but at least if you go with the kind of evidence that Ken and Rick mentioned, that really might give you an opportunity to get something done.
Okay, thank you.
And the last thing I want to say is what Rick said. Go to the top dog. Don't mess around in the middle. Go right to the person that is the top dog.
And she
Yeah,
is.
that's what I've seen a little bit of, though, is because it's kind of like this hierarchy that I understand and I appreciate, but at the same time, I've sent some messages, some emails out to, supervisors and managers over the departments that I work in that I know. And I also know, our director of hospitality, I know him well, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I know if I have the research behind it, then they can say, this is a way that we're just going to make our systems better. So
Sure.
hopefully
I could add real quick, if you want to be the best top dog when you are the top dog, don't forget the people on the front line and call them and ask them what's going on.
Yeah.
You'll learn a treasure trove of what's really happening.
Amazing.
Thank you.
All right. Well, all of you, thank you for hanging in here. Appreciate it. And I will see you next week. And Ken and Rick, thank you again for all you've done. Ken, you'll be getting an email today or tomorrow, just reminding everybody that we've moved Hospitable a year now again.
Oh.
So it's going to be on March 22nd, 2022. And Ken, we will be announcing our meeting, but it will be virtual again this time for the board. But then in October, it'll for sure be met. And I've already reserved your room for you. And Rick, if he chooses to join you for that meeting,
Sure.
It'd be
Thank you.
great. All right. Okay, guys. Anything else?
It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much for your
Okay.
time.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ken.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Go take a nap.
Bye.